And welcome back, guys. We are going to be previewing the Eastern Conference today. If you listen to our Western Conference preview, it was a lot of fun. Once again, we're going to have a great time previewing the NBA. And similar story, we're going to go from the dead on arrival to mid to the contenders in the league. Now, when I was doing my research for this, I noticed that unfortunately, there's a lot of teams in the East that are terrible. So I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are in the mid tier, but we're going to jump straight into it. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start off with the Indiana Pacers. Obviously had the best season in the history of their franchise last year. They came so close to upsetting the Thunder, and obviously they lost Halliburton. And the thing about it is, as we go into this season, they're not going to be as good. We can't expect them to win the finals, at least not to me. But no Halliburton, no Miles Turner. It's reasonable for me to expect them to take a step back. So I'm going to put them in the mid category. However, they have been able to win without Halliburton at a pretty high level in recent times. So my prediction is this. The Pacers are going to be a mid team, but they are going to ruin someone else's season, whether that's late in the regular season, throwing the seedings into a disarray, or in the playoffs, they are going to upset someone. So they're mid. They're going to ruin someone's season. But at the end of the day, going into next year, we will be talking about them as a contender.
No, 100%. The Pacers are the team that you really don't know what's going on. They're clearly a team that's really up and down for the simple fact that Pascal Siakam he's clearly a really top tier sort of player. When it comes to the rest of the team, I'll be honest with you, I don't really see a sort of high-level raiser, more of a floor raiser, if you really consider that. Like, if you really take a look at their depth chart, or really what the Indiana Pacers does, without Tyrese Halliburton, you have Andrew Nembhard, who is a playoff demon. Regular season, he ain't really that much, and he really needs to pick up that load. He's a 10-point-a-season scorer last season, which is really not a player you need, replacing a nearly 30-point scorer with Halliburton. Then you're relying on Benedict Mathurin, Aaron Nesmith, and whoever you're putting at center, if that's Isaiah Jackson, maybe Obi Toppin, maybe Jay Huff. These sort of players are really sort of not top caliber, compared to Miles Turner, the always, reliable sort of center you have for me. And now this is for the simple fact that even though I believe in Pascal Siakam, I'm saying they're dead on arrival. For the simple fact that the Pacers themselves are going to realize what's the point of possibly another injury of another star player. This could be a dead season. Let's hold back. Let's, retool. Let Hallie come back and have it as that. For me, it is a dead on arrival, but I do see a scenario where you are correct. 100% they can, in any way, shape, or form, surprise and bump off a team that possibly is a perennial play-in out of that seat.
I want to agree with you that they are dead at arrival, and I feel like they're going to tank.
And moving on to the next team, the Chicago Bulls. Now, they are an interesting team because they won 15 out of 20 to end this season last year, and they ended up losing in the play-in. And they do have some interesting players on their team. Of course, Kobe White, Vucevic, Giddey, among a few others. But when it comes to the Bulls, I just can't see them making any noise this year. I think they're going to be roughly around a 30-win team. I think they're going to be backing their way into the play-in, which to me means you're dead on arrival because if you're lucky, you'll be a 7-8 seed, and that's just not going to cut it. What do you see for the Bulls this year?
When it comes to the Bulls, there's a clear sort of, you could say, ceiling. And when it comes to this sort of team, the ceiling is you are lucky to make the plan. And I feel like that is such a weird thing to say for a historic franchise. But the players you have right now, no one, and I mean nobody, has a superstar floor or ceiling. And the only player I maybe has that, it's clearly Matthias Bucelis. And Bucelis, when it comes to him, he's a young player. He's going to a second year. He has the sort of build to be a star in this league. He's 6'10", 209 pounds. He's only 20 years old. You could say like that is a good forward player, but I don't know if he's strong enough to play the four. I don't know if he's fast enough to play the three. So he needs to find his way. He needs to find where he's at, and really needs to up the scoring because Kobe White is a clear, you could say, for me, like Kobe White is like a Colin Sexton. And I feel like that sort of player is just you're a six-man spark plug. You're only useful when the team sucks. Like and that's the thing where like when it comes to these sort of players, that's the type of player he is. He is a score first guard who the Bulls do not need, or if they do need him, he is a player that comes off the bench to really up the second unit. So again, and the one player now they're relying on because they paid him as a star is Josh Giddey. Allegations aside.
And then the next team that we're going to be talking about was kind of a surprise last year, at least for me, and that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. Obviously, they had a great regular season. They won over 60 games, and they did not have the playoffs that they wanted. They did have an injury to Darius Garland. Now, coming into this season, I will say I don't trust the Cavs when it comes down to a playoff series or going all the way. I don't trust this team, but at the same time, the East is so weak, and I think that they have the roster. They have to be contenders, the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, they bring back Donovan Mitchell, of course, Garland, Mobley, and I think just they match up really well against almost everybody in the East, and they are going to be contenders. What do you guys think about the Cavs?
No, 100%. They are contenders. And that's the thing when it comes to when you have a nearly 60 win, they won 60 wins. When it comes to a team of that caliber, the 60-win team sort of range, they are the teams that need to, and when I mean need to, they need to continue this sort of thing. Donovan Mitchell, he is still on the younger side, when it comes to a star. Donovan Mitchell is only, look, Donovan Mitchell is only 29. He is still young when it comes to this roster. You saw Darius Garland, who's still young. But the one thing you need, and this one thing is vital, Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley, Defensive Player of the Year. Evan Mobley, his scoring, and when it comes to his scoring, he needs to improve. His scoring is very much a sort of weird thing, you could say. He ain't as prolific as in the three ball as he probably should be. 37% from three, 55% from the field. It's very much Evan Mobley needs to attack the paint and double his scoring because Garland, unreliable when it comes to injuries. Jared Allen, he's in the paint. He's that sort of player that has that sort of touch post, block shots. That's the type of player he is. Mitchell, of course, the all-around scorer. But you have that sort of anomaly. DeAndre Hunter, the man that was supposed to be the next Kawhi Leonard, the man that was supposed to be the next OG Anunoby. He is just a regular role player, but I feel like that's what they need. Isaac Okoro was a black hole. And for all the basketball who don't know what that means, is that when the ball gets to him, the ball stops. The ball gets swallowed. Does a turnover. DeAndre is really that type of player. He knows that he's a 3-and-D. He'll toss the ball out when he needs to. He'll shoot the ball when he needs to. That's the type of player that they have, and that's the type of player that they need. Now, the second unit. The second unit is the sort of next big thing because of the signing of my GOAT, my guy, Chino Hill's finest, Lonzo Ball. If Lonzo Ball becomes the Chicago Bulls Lonzo Ball, the Pelicans Lonzo Ball, which was years ago, we're talking about first year Chicago Bulls, last year of the Pelicans, the one that earned the $20 million contract. If he can run the second unit, or if his defensive qualities are still there, he could possibly run the first unit when it comes to those crunch time defensive moments. Lonzo Ball needs to step up because I'm looking at the second unit. Dean Wade, Larry Nance Jr., Sam Morrell, those players aren't the elite role players that a championship team needs. But this season in the East is a really weak season. So if you have a good Lonzo Ball running that second unit, these players are serviceable enough for them to possibly make it to the finals. That is their goal. With a weak East, they need to make it to the finals. That is our prediction. Their contenders need to make it to the finals. The Cavs, they need to improve.
And then this next team is a fairly young and upcoming team, and that is the Detroit Pistons. They have a lot of talented players on their team. So they do have a lot of young talent on their team. Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris. They have Malik Beasley. They also added guys like Karis LeVert and Duncan Robinson. I think Detroit, taking that next step after winning almost 45 games last year, they have to be contending in the East. I think they are going to be the third seed in the East. Again, part of it is because they have a pretty good operation, but also part of it is like, who is their competition in the East, right? So I think they're going to be a third seed. I don't think they can push the Cavs and the other team that's going to be the number one seed on this list. But I do think they're going to be right there. They're going to be probably in the second round, and they're going to be a competitive team. Detroit is my prediction to be third seed in the East, and by nature of that, they're going to be the contending category. What do you think? With the week.
100%. They are the contending team. They have to be the contending team. Cade Cunningham last season showed that he is a star in this league. He showed the reason why he was number one overall. He showed the reason why he is such a high pedestal and the reason why the Pistons invested around him. Now, the big question, and I feel like it's a big question for the simple fact that we don't know the type of player he is. Jaden Ivey. He suffered a big injury last year. His sort of play style is a slasher, fast-paced offensive weapon. When you have an injury, the injury that he suffered, sometimes that speed gets reduced. When it comes to that, how do you manage that when it comes to Detroit? Now, in a weak East, in a weak East, he is truly the ideal player to work around the sort of slower players that the East has. And the East has a fair amount of slow players. And there's a weird thing that a lot of talent's on the West side when it comes to this sort of bracket. And the thing is that because there's so much talent on the West, the East is favorable with lower or lesser talent to improve on when it comes to the regular season. And the one other player that's really important, because we talked about his brother when it comes to the last video, Amen Thompson had such an improvement with the Rockets. The Pistons are expecting a sore Thompson, the brother, to improve like his brother. And that's the thing when it comes to the Pistons. Shooting is really lacking on this team. The reason why they got Duncan Robinson. It's the reason why they're expecting Karis LeVert to still be the type of player he is. Because Cade Cunningham, the type of player he is, he's a good sort of mid-range, but when it comes to shooting, 35% from the field. 35% from three, 46% from the field. He did score 26 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists. A great all-around player, but he needs to prove on his shooting. Now, this is where the black hole, I was talking about the black hole players. Astor Thompson I've been hearing he's getting that allegation. I don't think he's that. Jaden Ivey, he improved on his shooting in his limited plays, 40% from the field, but again, 46% from the field, 40% from three. These sort of stats are good, but if they want to be a true contender, which I believe they're going to be this season, they have to improve that three ball. And again, I don't know how much I'm going to rely on Tobias Harris, but in my opinion, with such a weak East, these players are going to improve. They're going to be a contender. For me, that is the destiny they're at, especially with the Pacers and other teams falling off that list.
This next one's going to be a little controversial, I think. We're talking about the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously, Milwaukee has one of the premier players in the sport in Giannis. They've won tons of games over the last 5 years. They've been a staple in the Eastern Conference for a long time. Now, they have kind of a pivotal season coming up because, of course, Giannis, there's been rumblings that he wants out. Not just this past offseason, but I feel like I've heard it for every year for the last maybe 2 years. Not to mention, as far as their prospects winning in the postseason, they have Doc Rivers. They are the latest team to get the Doc Rivers experience, which we all know outside of 2008 how that has worked out. So here is my prediction. Obviously, they have talent on their roster. They have Giannis. They have Miles Turner, Bobby Portis. They also have Kuzma. I mean, they have pieces. They, of course, lost Damian Lillard. We don't know what that's going to mean. But my prediction for the Bucks, they are going to be dead on arrival. Not because they're a bad team, but I think we're going to get into a weird situation this year where Giannis wants out and the team's going to kind of implode and something's going to happen around the trade deadline or over the summer. This team is not going to be able to compete where they want to. Am I crazy? What do you think?
Look how they massacred my boy. Oh my God. I talked about my previous GOAT, Lonzo, because he played for the Lakers. He's supposed to be the promised child, the one that Magic Johnson said his jersey will be on the rafters. But truly, the modern NBA got with me when it comes to me liking the modern NBA was because of number 34, Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look what they did to this team. This team was a championship contender just in 2021. They had great pieces like Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Brooke Lopez. They really dog like PJ Tucker. But now you're telling me he's playing with Kyle Kuzma? Kyle Kuzma, really? And you're telling me that, oh yeah, the allegedly Kevin Porter Jr., which, for all my soccer fans out there, Prison FC for sure. They were talking about Gary Trent Jr., who's a good player. I won't talk bad about Gary Trent Jr. or Miles Turner, but we're looking at this bench here. Cole Anthony, AJ Green, Terrian Prince, Bobby Portis, which respect to Bobby, and then the rejected son of New York, Jericho Sims. You're telling me this team is the championship team that they promised for Giannis? As much as I want to say dead on, I'm going to back up Giannis to keep his word for this year. And it'll make them a mid-tier. They are not championship contenders. I gave one time a championship contender to support for Kyle Kuzma. He made me regret it after he won a championship. Ain't no way I'm backing you up Kyle Kuzma again. The Milwaukee Bucks, they're mid. They're the definition of mid. Honestly, I feel like they would be out of the playoffs if they ever played in the West.
Same mid. I feel like they're going to be mid, and sorry, Giannis.
Moving on to the next, do you guys want to do Atlantic Division or Southeast Division next? I'll let you guys choose.
South Division.
This division is absolutely poverty. So we'll start with who I think has the brightest future in the division. That is the Atlanta Hawks. Of course, Trae Young has been a staple in Atlanta for a long time, and obviously there's nothing that needs to be said about his skill set. We already know what he can do. But Atlanta, they have been the same team for the longest time. 40 wins, okay? He's been a great player. However, what are we even talking about with this roster? Trae Young. We've got Jalen Johnson. We've got an old Kristaps. I mean, yes, he can still play, but he's not what he should be. Dyson Daniels. But the problem for the Hawks, I'm not going to waste any time with this team because they are the same thing every single year. Slightly above average. They get bounced fairly early. Trae Young is good, but they have to blow up their entire operation. I'm not going to pretend like they have any sort of optimism this year. If they prove me wrong, that's fine, but to me, they're dead on arrival. I don't care about this team.
Oh my God. Atlanta. The literal definition of mid. If you literally look up Atlanta Hawks and their record, it's quite literally 50%. If not a little less, a little more. They are the definition of mid. This team, and really I'm going to put the blame on Trae Young and the front office. You waited until now, after their 2021 season, where they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. You waited until now to finally build a team that would support Trae Young. What were you doing, man? Like literally, when I talk about these sort of teams that Trae Young was playing with, they're really nobodies. And that's the thing though, finally there's people around him who really are meant to be around Trae Young. Dyson Daniels, the steal leader, and when it came to the breakout player, finally a defensive guard next to Trae Young. Jalen Johnson, the pop prospect, the sort of do-it-all player. If you really think about an auto-generated player, when it could do a do-it-all sort of thing, that is Jalen Johnson. Explosive, could pass, can shoot. He's the player they need. Kristaps Porzingis is finally a big that could block shots and shoot. Yes, he's not the Tingus Pingus of old in New York. He ain't the Kristaps of Boston, but he clearly is sort of a player that they still need. And of course, their center, like Chino Hills finds again, USC player, Onyeka Okongwu. He is the player that finally left Clint Capella's shadow if he is the starter. They may be playing that sort of twin tower sort of offense with the forward that is over 7 foot, around 7 foot, and the center that's also big. And even though Onyeka is like 6'9", around there, he ain't the tallest center. He is a very athletic center. So he's 6'9", 6'10". But when it comes to these sort of Hawks, the second unit is truly the one that needs to be the one that steps up. Zachary Richichet, the French forward that was the number one overall pick last year. You were the definition of mid. You weren't good. You weren't bad. Honestly, you were okay. Now, the rest of the players on the second unit, Luke Kennard, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, Asa Newell, Mohamed Gueye, these sort of players are really a trial and error. I feel like me talking this much is a disrespect to the rest of the NBA. So I'm going to say this. They're mid. Their definition of mid. Maybe in this East they'll go far, but when it comes to this season, if Atlanta does go far, Hawks fans, don't overreact. Once the East gets healthy again, you're going back down to the play-in. Do not pay Trae Young if you still want to be mid. If you still want to be mid, pay Trae Young. If not, trade him, let him go on free agency, just build from new. That's all I'm going to say.
And I'm not a fan of this team, but I feel like they've been talking about a rebuild for as long as I can remember. That's the Charlotte Hornets. Of course, they've got lots of talented players like LaMelo Ball, Miles Bridges, Brandon Miller. They actually have, I think, a pretty decent roster that can compete, not to mention Colin Sexton. But the thing with them last year is they struggled with health. So they had trouble with, of course, LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller and Bridges, not to mention Trey Mann, all missing lots of games last year. So they can't possibly have put together anything that in terms of making progress when no one is on the court. And yes, I imagine those guys will be on the floor more this year. But with that being said, maybe you don't magically go from how many games did they win last year? Let's see. They won, oh my God. They didn't even win 20 games last year. So you're not going to go from winning whatever it was, 17 games, to all of a sudden winning 40. So I do think they're going to be better. I do think they're going to make progress in their rebuild, but this team is dead on arrival. They might have a couple games where, there's some highlights that we see on Bleacher Report or ESPN, but they're not going to do anything of significance, even in the weak East. Again, they might have a couple games where they can upset a team that's sleeping in like November or something, but this team, the rebuild, is in full mode.
The same thing I said about Trae Young, the way that he plays, just copy and paste to LaMelo Ball and just have a taller version. This team they're relying on an unreliable player whose ankles are as brittle as probably sand. And you're relying on when we talk about the Kevin Porter and the Prison FC, Miles Bridges, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, who, again, I don't know how much faith I have when he considers his GOAT to be Paul George. Yeah, I don't know about that. And then you have the perennial six-man Colin Sexton. When it comes to this team, honestly, they're dead on arrival. That 19 wins, honestly, it could be less. Or it could be more, honestly. With this sort of dead East, they could honestly have a surprise play-in spot when it comes to a 10-seed sort of team. But when it comes to what I think of them as a roster, they're dead on arrival. Michael Jordan, the only flaw he had was buying the Hornets and making them the way they are. Or else he probably could have had a perfect legacy, but this is a true stain to his legacy. Even though he's not the owner anymore, you're still seeing the repercussions, these sort of effects that his decision had made to this roster, this team. And if the NBA is truly going to relocate somebody, relocate Charlotte. If you're really going to put a team in Vegas, just move the Charlotte Hornets, put them in Vegas. I think Charlotte's had so much damage. Put that over there and it should be all good.
Charlotte fans hate you now.
All 5 of them, cool.
Charlotte's like the Jacksonville Jaguars. No fans and always in last place.
This next team has been the definition of the little engine that could for about the past 7-8 years, and that is the Miami Heat. Honestly, again, we talked about in our tier 1 over in the preseason, or not even the preseason, the offseason. Miami has done more with less, and they have been a really good franchise. Again, post LeBron, you would have thought that they would have fallen off of a cliff, but year after year after year, they're always making the playoffs, and every once in a while they'll make a splash. Tyler Hero's hurt, which you would imagine he's their best player by far. But they also have a couple other guys. So Bam Adebayo, they've got Norman Powell, they've got Andrew Wiggins, not to mention all 5. They seem to find themselves overachieving with Spoelstra. He's been, I think, one of the great coaches in the history of this league. So Miami, they have to be the definition of mid. Can they make a splash in the East? Yes. But can they make the Eastern Conference Finals? I would say no. I think there's a couple more teams that they have too much firepower, and Miami's not going to be able to compete with, let's just say, Detroit or Cleveland or another team that's going to come up later. So Miami, I think you're going to be around the 5 to 6 seed, and that's about it. So to me, you're a mid team this year.
When it comes to the Miami Heat, no Tyler Hero is a big loss. And the reason why it's a big loss is that who is now going to run your offense? And there's a player that they got that they're hoping to replicate what he did with the Clippers. And that's Norman Powell. Now, Norman Powell last year, he was a good player in the Clippers offense and the Clippers thing. 21 point per game score, truly efficient enough, 48 from the field, 41 from 3, efficient enough. But when it comes to this Heat offense, if he's now the primary scorer, now that Hero's gone, where do you put Wiggins? Where do you put Bam? Your starting point guard is Davion Mitchell, former King. Nikola Jovic, even though he's not a rookie, he's still young. He's still a little unproven. He's decent. He ain't the best player, but you could tell that he has sort of a ceiling to him that's pretty good. Now, your bench is truly where it needs to show this sort of Heat culture. And this is the thing with the Heat. They find unproven talent or wasted talent and make them good again. So I'm hoping that their second unit with Yakashonis, with Terry Rozier, with my Mexican brother Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, these sort of players need to step up to make the Heat more than what my boy D said. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think this team is destined, especially in such a weak East, 5 to 8 seed. They're going to barely scrape into the playoffs or even play in again. And it's truly whether or not their team is good enough when Tyler Hero returns in order to maintain or to come back into that sort of situation. Because you're now relying on an unreliable Norman Powell, which you're relying on him to replicate what he did to the Clippers, and they're relying on Wiggins, who hasn't been a primary scorer since his days in Minnesota. Those are the players you're relying on. For me, 5 to 8 seed, they're mid. That's the best they're going to be. That's about it for me.
This is going to be, I think, my hot take of the day, and that is the Orlando Magic. Obviously, well, before I even talk about them, kind of weird. Last year, I decided to put some money on a random Orlando Magic game, and I watched it, and I was like, actually, this team's they're pretty good. And all of a sudden, with the Magic, I'm watching them, And they have a nice team, not to mention some of the additions they made this offseason. But before we get into that, Pablo Banchero, he should be an all-star. Franz Wagner should be an all-star. Desmond Bane, he averaged 19 points per game. Also, Jalen Suggs and Tyus Jones, they have a squad of guys. They're all pretty young, and they're going to continue to get better. This team is going to crash the party in the East this year, and this is my prediction. They are going to upset someone, and they are going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals because, number one, the East is weak. So they're going to be able to compile wins, number one. Number two, I think they are young enough and talented enough, and they can hit the three ball with Desmond Bane enough to upset a team like a Cleveland, who, like I said earlier, I don't trust them in the playoffs. So I think Orlando is going to upset a team. They're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, and tell me why I'm wrong.
The reason you're wrong, and there's a reason why they traded players to get this in Bane. The Magic suck at the three ball. They're one of the worst in the whole league at shooting the three ball. So even though I do expect them to be contenders in this week East, they have to make sure, and this is such a big if, because we've been saying this for years now. Franz Wagner, you need to take a step forward because, buddy, you have been stagnating for a long time. Everyone else has stepped up. Paolo Banchero has stepped up. Jalen Suggs has stepped up. Wendell Carter has stepped up. But you, my guy, you have stagnated. And that is a bad thing for a team that is trying to contend. Even though, again, I'm not going to knock it down. 24 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists. Good, right? 46 from the field. Good, right? 29 from the three. 29 from the three. You're telling me that this player is going to go from 29 to, and I'm not even going to be like bad. You have to be realistic with some of these players. Be at least 35. 35, you could say it's average for a non-shooter or for someone who's trying to be a shooter. You have to be at least 35. You can't be sub 30. And when it comes to Franz Wagner, if you do not take that shooting leap, if I was the Magic, I would consider trading him. I know it's odd, I know it's out there, but you have to consider trading him because Paolo Banchero, he's also a non-shooter. He's a slasher. He's back to the basket. He's that sort of player. 25% from the field. But he shot better than Franz Wagner. He shot 32% from the three. Wagner shot 29. So clearly, if you're trying to contend in the modern NBA, you have to have good shooters around your star. And the star is Paolo Banchero. So Franz needs to shoot. Again, that's the only thing I would say that when it comes to the Magic's three-point shooting, they've notoriously been bad. So Desmond Bane has to improve that, and Franz Wagner has to improve on that. If not, there's no way they're making the Eastern Conference Finals because the other teams around them, they do have shooters. They can improve through that aspect.
Let me ask you this. So if they do improve upon the three-point shooting, do you think they can make the Eastern Conference Finals or they will?
Oh, I think they can. I'm not giving that will guarantee because there's another team out there we haven't talked about yet. And they're clearly improving to that point. So when it came to the rebuild, the Magic were on par with that team at the start. But the Knicks, which I'm going to say right now because I have to, because their team has improved enough to where the Magic has stagnated. So when it comes to the Magic, if they do not improve their three ball, they cannot get to that next level. They will always be stagnated. They will always hit that wall. And Desmond Bane needs to be that person that will get them over the hump. If not, they're stagnating. They're staying there. Even though I think they're contenders in this East and other East, you can clearly tell they're not at that point.
There's not a lot to say about this next team, and that is our friends in our nation's capital, the Washington Wizards, of course. They've been terrible for a long time now, and I don't see it improving anytime soon. Of course, they do have some new faces, but I mean, did they have enough to change the narrative? And the answer is no. Of course, they didn't even win 20 games. Now, they added Marvin Bagley. Of course, they had Malachi Branham, Dylan Jones, Cam Whitmore. But the thing is, This team right now, they're just playing for a lottery, and there's not a lot to say about them. The Wizards, to me, are the definition of dead on arrival. What do you have to say about our friends in Washington?
They're dead on right. And this is the thing when it comes to the Wizards. Just looking at the roster right now, it's bad. Right? When it comes to the Wizards, it's clearly hey, we're just here to improve our young talent. And please, these veterans, help, please. Just help us out. And sadly, this isn't the sort of team that Chris Middleton deserves. He went from the Pistons to Milwaukee. Now he's on the Wizards. My guy had one good period. Why do you make him suffer more? He doesn't deserve this. What has Chris Middleton have done to this league? Because clearly you want to make him suffer. And the other player, CJ McCollum. He went from Portland to New Orleans, not to Washington. He has also suffered a lot. Now, when it comes to the Wizards, they have 4, if not 3, young talent. I will say 4. 4 young talent that could possibly be something. But I'm talking about 4 or 5 years from now. Bub Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Alex Sarr, and Cam Whitmore. The only issue is that I feel like the Wizards would just waste them. And they did it to John Wall. They did it to Bradley Beal. I won't be surprised they'll do it to these guys. Dead on arrival, nothing more to be said. Honestly, if they don't show up in the league, I don't think anybody would notice.
We got one division left, and we're going to talk about the team or the franchise that is the best franchise in the history of the NBA, and that is the Boston Celtics. One thing all three of us have in common is we absolutely hate the Celtics. I happen to hate every single team that's in Boston, even Boston College, just because they're from Boston. Now, the thing is with the Celtics, obviously they lost Jason Tatum, but they have been one of the model franchises in the NBA over the last 10 years. They have been very consistent. They've played tough. They've played hard. They tried beating the Warriors in the finals in 2022, but they came up short. Now, as far as this season, what can we expect from Boston? Well, they're going to be in the playoffs. Worst case, they're going to be in the play-in. This team is scrappy without Jason Tatum. I think they have enough players on their team to still make the playoffs, especially considering how weak the East is. Of course, there's no Tatum, but we got Jaylen Brown, Derek White. I think there's enough on this team to get them into the playoffs. Again, are they going to make noise? No. But I think that their whole operation is good enough. They're not going to be a lottery team. They're going to be good enough to get into the playoffs, maybe an 8 seed, and we'll leave it at that. But I can tell that my boy E has a problem with that. Tell me why you hate the Celtics and why they're not going to be in the playoffs.
It's Celtics. I hate them with all my passion. Every time I see the green, all I think about is bombing. So I'm gonna say this.
They're not.
Sam Hauser moves you. When it comes to the Celtics, oh my God, I have prayed for these days. You have no idea how much I have prayed to see their downfall and to see them fail. I will say this. Bro, I don't want to talk about this dead team. The Celtics are going to be dead on arrival for the simple fact that even though, I will say this, what's scaring me, that for some reason Jason Tatum is doing NBA drills. He's doing basketball drills. He's doing stuff like that. That is scaring me to the point that maybe he'll come back early. If he does, I want the NBA to test him for steroids. There ain't no way somebody's coming back this early from an Achilles tear. Ain't no way.
There's no way he's going to come back. I think it's just them trying to hype him up, and it's propaganda.
If we're having Super Cena moments inside the NBA, the script has to be out of control. But to go back to the true thing that we all know, the Celtics itself, in my opinion, they're entering a period in their franchise to where they have to either sink with the ship and hopefully they can plug the holes, or they do abandon ship and let it fall like the Titanic. So for me, I'm going to put them as dead or arrival because I'm expecting them just to sack off the season come in next season with an improved team, traded out Bernie Simons for like a center, and that's all I'm going to say.
They're not. 4 teams left, and this one, I mean, again, not a lot has to be said. They are dead on arrival. That is the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, this team, it's dark times for them. This is going to be known as kind of the lowest point of their franchise. After losing Kevin Durant, of course, the team has slowly gotten worse and worse. They are, for me, this is more about the future, right? So on their roster, of course, Michael Porter. They've got Keon Johnson. When we look at their roster top to bottom, this is not a team that is going to be contending for anything, even the play-in, and I think they know that. Now, the thing about the Nets, I'm not going to waste too much time on them. They have tons of cap space next season. So I think what's going to happen is, of course, they're going to be a disaster. Hopefully get a lottery pick. Hopefully get someone who can turn your franchise around, and then spend big next year to really improve your team. But they're not going anywhere, so they're going to be dead on arrival. Enjoy the suck, Nets fans.
Oh my God. The Brooklyn Nets. Oh, how the mighty have fallen again. How is it after trading for Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, getting ISO Joe, and you failing, and seeing the Celtics, which I'll never ever forgive you, giving the Celtics the assets to draft Jason Tatum, to draft Jaylen Brown, basically gift them a championship. I am happy you are failing in your success. You deserve as much failure and hatred as possible, because nothing you have done in your franchise has ever succeeded or happened. You could have won the championship in the early days, but for some reason you squandered it. I will say you did go against the Lakers, but you clearly have not learned your lesson. Why did you draft so many point guards this season? You have Igor Demon, Nolan Traore, Ben Serra. You don't need 3 point guards. You just don't need them. But for some reason, you're deciding, you know what, we'll do it. And then you have Cam Thomas, your scorer, who you couldn't even pay. He's on a qualifying offer. Next year, he could leave. If you get no free agent, you just lost your 20 per game score. Now, controversy aside, Michael Porter Jr. He is a great shooter. That's about it. And in this team, you don't need that. You need someone who can play defense. You need someone who can rebound. And you need the scoring. But you just have the scoring. My opinion, dead on arrival. You'll be praying you don't have as many wins as the Hornets.
Nets fans, why did you guys leave New Jersey? You guys should have just stayed in New Jersey. In Brooklyn, you guys are nothing. The Knicks are destroying you guys in popularity. You guys should have just stayed in New Jersey.
And now probably the best team in the Eastern Conference, at least on paper. This team could not ask for better circumstances to make the finals this year. This is a franchise and a fan base that thinks they're better than they are, better than they have been. But this is their chance to finally get to the final. Now, where do we even start with this team? Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns. When they first got together, I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think it was going to be a failure, but I did not think they would have the chemistry that they did have. And guess what? It exploded last year. Now, I actually think they're going to get better as a duo this year. But not only that, the Knicks with Mikal Bridges, they have been a defensive team as well. So when it comes to this team, they have the veterans. They have the defense. They should be in the finals. If they cannot make it to the finals this year, this is going to be one of the biggest collapses. Not biggest collapses. One of the biggest disappointments of any NBA team in recent history. Last year, they had a shot. They lost to Indiana, sure. But maybe you could argue that Indiana was just a team of destiny. This year, the Knicks, this is your time. Not to mention, did I forget to mention Josh Hart? This is your time to finally make it to the finals. And the Eastern Conference, as we've said, is so weak. There is no excuses barring injury.
New York, stand up. Come on, boys. This is your time. When it came to the time of the Mecca, Madison Square Garden, you guys are in the best position possible to finally, and I mean finally, a la The Rock, finally win a championship. You haven't won a championship since the 70s. I'm talking about early 70s. We've talked about going through a whole process, a whole generation. There have been multiple generations. So, this team is built for success. Bodega Carl Anthony Towns needs to be out there doing what he needs to do. But Carl Anthony Towns, the big perv himself, needs to finally, and this is for a lot of teams in the East, get out of that juju and finally succeed in the playoffs. Because he has been a player ever since his time in Minnesota that crumbles in the playoffs. When he sees adversity, he crumbles. There is a famous story told by Jeff Teague when he was playing in Minnesota. They were going against the Pelicans of Anthony Davis and the Boogie Cousins. Jeff Teague said when they were playing Taj Gibson and Karl Anthony Towns that if one player fouled, they would switch. Karl Anthony Towns had Boogie Cousins. Jeff Teague said it himself. The minute Boogie got the ball, he fouled him and called Taj Gibson to call for a switch. That mentality needs to go away. That's the only sort of if I have, is that if Karl Anthony Towns can finally go over that hump. Because the Knicks need it. Clearly, and the thing though, when it comes to the rest of the Knicks roster, I have no complaints. Their roster is as complete as it can be when healthy. You know, you said it, Brunson, Bridges, OG, even Josh Hart. If everything falls right, they are a true contender to get out of the East. They are truly the number one. The Cavs were last year, but I feel like this team, when healthy, when everything rolls out, they are the true number one. They have to be the true number one. And I'll be honest with you, this may be a hot take. I like the NBA better when the Knicks are better. When New York has a team. Because their fans, and I'll say this, probably top 5, if not top 3 in the whole NBA when they're winning.
This next team is weird because in theory they're ready to win now, but in reality they're not. That's the Toronto Raptors. And of course, when we look at their roster, again, everyone in their starting 5 is locked up into relatively long-term contracts. And they have guys who can, they can play. They have some guys that can play. Now, when we look at this team, whether it's Brandon Ingram or Scotty Barnes or RJ Barrett, again, they have guys that can compete, that can play. I just don't like their roster as a whole enough to really put them in any other category besides mid. They will probably be a play-in team, and they might even make, the full-on playoffs. But I don't like this team's roster enough to say that they're going to do anything of significance, even when the East is weak. So I see them being anywhere from like a 9 to a 7 seed.
The true 2019 NBA Finals, please stand up. I'm currently rocking the Raptors Vince Carter 98-99 jersey. And I'll tell you this. This dinosaur has not looked better than this. My God, does this jersey look great. Also, your team is mid.
And then we're going to finish this off. If you've been listening, we appreciate you. Stay tuned for more NBA episodes. We're going to finish this off with probably the most toxic team, or one of the most toxic teams in the league, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. I think we all remember when the Sixers were a joke. And, as they would say, trust the process, and they would tank. And I wanted to see them do really well. All that goodwill has slowly eroded because year after year after year. There's injuries, there's load management, there's guys, not necessarily trying or being put in the right position to win, i.e. Ben Simmons. So when I look at this team, yes, they have talent. If everyone's healthy, they can be a contender in the East. But we've said that for so long. So I'm tired of talking about the Sixers until they show me something. As you both know, I have a personal vendetta against Embiid. He's cost me multiple fantasy basketball championships. But still, as far as on the court, they have the talent to be one of the top teams in the East, and they should be, but they're not. With the Sixers, I'm going to say dead on arrival because I'm not even going to consider you mid until you show me something, finally.
Oh my God, this team. When it comes to the 76ers, I want them to succeed so bad as well because I want competition in the East. But the fake MVP, Joel Embiid, the injured MVP, the guy that cannot do anything but be injured. And sadly, when I say that statement, I can apply that to so many players on this team. Not just Embiid, but Paul George. You have a very old Kyle Lowry. And I'm looking at their injury when it comes to their roster, who's injured. Jared McCain might be out till November. We don't know the situation with Quentin Grimes, the whole idea whether they're going to pay him, whether they're not going to pay him. The rookie BJ Edgecombe, that's a whole idea of what's he going to be in this roster. And Embiid is out, Paul George is out. You don't have Quentin Grimes. You don't have Jared McCain. You're not relying on Maxey and a rookie to propel you to the playoffs. That is a dire situation. In my opinion, somebody run around, start saying, instead of the British are coming, the injury demon is coming because he clearly ravaged this team. For me, they're mid because I'm hoping at least Embiid plays enough games for them to be mid. That's all I'm going to say when it comes to the 76ers.
And that's going to wrap it up for this episode. If you listen to that, we really appreciate you. And we ask kindly that you give us a follow. We're going to have a lot more content coming out this week. We're going to this is the first time in a long time we've been able to do something in person. So stay tuned for much more. And we will see you in the next episode.